I never thought a small-town diner could change my life. My name's Alex, I'm 24, and I moved back to Cedar Falls after college, trying to figure out what adult life even meant. Cedar Falls wasn't a bustling city. It was sleepy, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you even say a word. I had just walked into Millie's diner for a late breakfast, hoping for something simple, when I saw her. Her name was Evelyn. She was 35, older than me, and there was something about her that immediately grabbed my attention. Dark brown hair, sharp hazel eyes, and a confidence in the way she moved that made it impossible to look away. She was sitting at the counter, sipping black coffee, flipping through a worn notebook. She seemed absorbed in her own world, yet completely aware of everything around her. I ordered my breakfast, pretending to glance at the menu, but I kept sneaking glances at her. Then, out of nowhere, she looked up. Our eyes met, and she gave this small, knowing smile that sent a jolt straight through me. I had no idea what to say, my mind went blank, and I felt like a teenager all over again. Summoning every ounce of courage, I slid onto the stool next to her. "Hi, do you come here often?" I asked, cliché and awkward, but my voice steady. She raised an eyebrow, that playful glint in her eyes making me flush. "I do now," she said softly, with a hint of sarcasm that made me laugh nervously. "And you?" "First time," I admitted. "I just moved back to Cedar Falls." "That explains it," she said, her tone casual but layered with meaning. "You're not used to small-town rules yet. People here notice everything." We started talking. Her voice was calm, smooth, slightly husky, carrying the authority and confidence of someone who had lived, learned, and survived more than I could guess. She told me she was a freelance graphic designer, had moved here after years in New York City, and was working on a personal project she wouldn't reveal yet. I found myself hanging on every word. I told her about myself, my degree in journalism, my recent return, my uncertainty about the future. She listened, asking questions that were curious but not intrusive. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely seen. Not just noticed, but understood. Our conversation flowed easily, moving from work to hobbies, to favorite books, music, and local legends. She had a subtle, dry humor that kept me on edge, making me laugh at things I normally wouldn't. Time passed unnoticed. The morning crowd left, the diner emptied, yet we stayed, talking as if we'd known each other for years. And then, just when I thought I was getting comfortable, she said something that made me stop in my tracks. "I've learned the hard way," she said quietly, eyes distant for a second. "Trust is dangerous. Love even more so. But sometimes, it's worth the risk." Something about that sentence struck me. Here was a woman older, experienced, clearly shaped by life's challenges, yet speaking as if she saw potential in someone like me. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I sensed it wasn't a story she would tell lightly. The afternoon light shifted. Millie's diner was closing. Evelyn stood, gathering her things. "I guess this is goodbye for now," she said, smiling in a way that made my chest tighten and my stomach twist at the same time. I walked out feeling something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation, curiosity, and a spark of desire. I didn't know it yet, but this was the start of something intense, something complicated, and something that would change me in ways I hadn't imagined. That night, I replayed every detail in my head: the way she laughed, the confidence in her voice, the depth behind her eyes. I realized I wanted more than a casual conversation. I wanted to know Evelyn, to be part of her world, even if it meant stepping into a story much bigger than me. By the time I got home, I knew one thing for certain: my life in Cedar Falls would never be the same. The next day, I found myself back at Millie's diner, hoping for a coincidence, or maybe some kind of sign that Evelyn would be there again. And she was, sitting in the same spot, notebook open, coffee steaming. It was like she had been waiting for me. My heart skipped when she looked up, and that small, knowing smile returned. "Back so soon?" she asked, voice teasing yet calm. "You're either very lucky or very persistent." "Maybe a little of both," I replied, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. We talked again, and this time it felt like the barriers between us had shifted slightly. She asked more personal questions, subtly probing into my life, my past, my dreams. I realized she had a keen intuition, an ability to read people without them even saying much. I told her about my failed attempts to find direction after college, my doubts, my longing to make something of myself in a town that seemed too small for big ambitions. She listened, genuinely, nodding, her eyes softening at moments, sharp at others. "I like that you're honest," she said. "Most people aren't. They hide behind smiles or excuses. You actually speak." I felt a warmth spreading through me. It was one thing to be noticed, but to be truly heard, that was rare. Evelyn had a way of making you feel important, even when you didn't feel particularly significant. The conversation drifted into lighter topics: books, music, favorite movies. I discovered she loved old noir films, the kind with morally gray characters, tension, and suspense. "I like stories where people aren't perfect," she said. "Life isn't perfect either, so why should fiction be?" That line stuck with me. I realized that her perspective was shaped not just by age, but by experience. She'd seen enough of the world to know that life wasn't simple, love wasn't easy, and trust wasn't freely given. And yet, here she was, engaging with a young guy like me, as if she was willing to take a calculated risk. After breakfast, we walked outside, meandering through the quiet streets of Cedar Falls. The town seemed almost picturesque in the soft morning light, but I noticed the small hints of unease in her glances, the way she scanned corners, the subtle tension in her posture. "Small towns are like that," she said quietly. "People notice more than you think. And some things, some people, they remember too much." I asked her what she meant, but she just smiled enigmatically. I could tell there were layers to her life I wasn't privy to yet, stories that shaped her, perhaps even battles she hadn't shared with anyone. The thought intrigued me. It made me want to be patient, to earn her trust, to discover her world piece by piece. Over the next few hours, we shared more than just casual conversation. She walked me through the hidden corners of the town, the old bookstore, the abandoned train tracks, the tiny park overlooking the river. It felt like an initiation into her life, her personal landscape, her secrets wrapped in mundane places. I felt alive in a way I hadn't before, my senses heightened by the thrill of being near her. Later, as we sat on a bench watching the water, she leaned back, letting her eyes follow the sunset. "I don't usually let people in this easily," she admitted quietly. "But there's something different about you. I can't explain it." I felt my chest tighten. "I don't fully understand it either," I said. "But I want to. I want to know you, Evelyn. Not just who you let the world see, but all of you." She turned to me, eyes intense. "That's a dangerous promise," she said, her voice low. "But maybe it's worth the risk." As we walked back toward the diner, I realized that my life had irrevocably changed in just a day. Evelyn was more than a beautiful, confident woman. She was a challenge, a mystery, a storm I wanted to be caught in. And somehow, I knew this was only the beginning. By the time I got home, I was thinking about her nonstop, her laughter, her gaze, the way she moved. I knew I was drawn into something far bigger than a casual crush. Something complex, thrilling, and perhaps dangerous. But I didn't care. I wanted it. And deep down, I knew she felt it too. Over the next week, Evelyn and I started seeing each other more intentionally. Not dates exactly, but moments where the world seemed to shrink down to just us. We met at the park, walked along the river, or lingered at Millie's diner long after the morning crowd had gone. Every interaction felt charged, like there was an unspoken understanding threading between us, pulling us closer with each word, each glance. One evening, she invited me to her apartment under the pretense of showing me her project. I wasn't prepared for what I walked into. Her living space was a blend of minimalism and chaos, books stacked on every surface, canvases leaning against the walls, sketches pinned up everywhere. But there was a sense of personality and precision in the way she organized her chaos. It reflected her, composed, meticulous, yet untamed beneath the surface. She offered me wine, and we sat on the balcony overlooking the quiet town streets below. "I don't usually invite people here," she said, her tone almost hesitant. "It's personal." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. There was intimacy in sharing this space, in letting me glimpse the parts of her life she rarely exposed. I realized then how rare it was for someone like her to allow vulnerability. We talked for hours, shifting seamlessly between light-hearted banter and deeper confessions. Evelyn spoke of her years in New York, the successes, the betrayals, the heartbreaks. I shared my own fears and insecurities, the pressure of returning home with no clear path, and the lingering feeling that I hadn't truly lived until now. At some point, she leaned closer, her hand brushing against mine. My heart skipped a beat. "Alex," she said softly, "I don't want to scare you off. I've had my share of complicated situations. But with you, I feel something different." I swallowed, trying to maintain composure. "I feel it too, and I don't want it to end before it even begins." For the first time, there was a pause, a quiet acknowledgement of the tension, attraction, and curiosity building between us. I realized this wasn't just infatuation. This was something deeper, more dangerous in its intensity. Evelyn was older, experienced, and I was naive in comparison, yet somehow we were meeting halfway, learning each other in real time. But life, as always, had a way of complicating things. Later that night, as I walked home, I noticed someone watching me from across the street. Just a silhouette, quickly disappearing around the corner. My stomach twisted. Was it a coincidence? Or had being with Evelyn drawn attention I didn't notice before? I texted her, hesitating, unsure if I should mention it. Her reply was almost immediate. "Don't worry. Small towns have eyes everywhere. Let's not let it ruin tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." Her confidence both comforted and unnerved me. She was clearly used to dealing with unexpected complications, but this was a world I hadn't been part of yet. I realized being with her wasn't just about attraction or romance. It came with an unspoken tension, a dance between intimacy and caution. The next day, we met at the river, as if nothing had happened. She smiled, teasing, brushing off the previous night's mystery. But I noticed her eyes flicker to shadows, to distant figures, as if measuring threats invisible to everyone else. She didn't explain, and I didn't press, but I understood something fundamental. Being with Evelyn meant being part of a life that wasn't simple or predictable. By the end of that week, our connection had grown into something undeniable. I was drawn to her intellect, her humor, and the way she could be simultaneously tender and commanding. She seemed to notice every detail about me, every hesitation, every unspoken thought. And I was captivated, not just by her beauty, but by the layers of experience, mystery, and resilience she carried. That night, lying in bed, I realized how much I was thinking about her, her smile, her voice, the tension between attraction and danger. This wasn't just a crush anymore. It was a pull, a force that felt like destiny in a small-town world filled with secrets. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Love with Evelyn would be intense, thrilling, and yes, complicated. But I was ready to step into that world, wherever it might lead. A week later, things started to shift. Our connection was undeniable, but life, predictably, found a way to complicate it. Evelyn invited me to a local art show where some of her work was being displayed. I was excited, eager to see her world up close, yet nervous about stepping fully into her life. The gallery was small but intimate, walls adorned with bold sketches and abstract paintings. People moved quietly from one piece to another, murmuring admiration. Evelyn was in her element, talking to visitors, explaining her pieces with passion and precision. I watched her, fascinated by the way she commanded the room, effortlessly blending warmth and authority. As the night progressed, I noticed a few glances directed toward her that carried more than casual interest. Some people were friendly, others seemed calculating, like they were assessing her. One man, older, with slicked back hair and a sharp suit, lingered near a painting she had displayed. There was an intensity in his gaze, a subtle challenge. I felt a flicker of unease but tried not to overthink it. After the gallery closed, Evelyn and I walked outside. The air was crisp, the quiet streets glowing under streetlights. "You handled tonight really well," I said. "I didn't realize how powerful your presence was until I saw it in action." She smiled but didn't respond immediately. "Power isn't everything," she said softly. "It's knowing how to protect yourself when people try to take it away." Her eyes lingered on the shadows around the street, and I realized she wasn't just speaking metaphorically. She had a history here, and some part of it was still very real. I asked her about the man at the gallery, and for a moment, she hesitated. "Old acquaintances," she said lightly. "People from my past who didn't exactly play fair. I don't want to drag you into that yet." The honesty, paired with restraint, made me respect her even more. But I couldn't ignore the fact that life with Evelyn was inherently dangerous. Her experience, her past, and her presence in a small town where curiosity and judgment thrived meant I was stepping into a world I barely understood. Over the next few days, we grew closer, exploring the town and each other's routines. Morning coffees turned into long walks into shared dinners, and slowly, intimacy crept in, not just physical, but emotional. She began sharing small stories from her past, the kind that revealed pain, resilience, and triumph. I shared my own fears, moments of self-doubt, and unspoken dreams. And then, one evening, a message arrived. No name, just a brief warning. Be careful. Not everyone in Cedar Falls is as they seem. My stomach twisted. I showed it to Evelyn. She read it calmly, then placed her hand over mine. This isn't new, she said. But it's a reminder. I've dealt with worse. And now, you're part of it. I realized fully then that being with her wasn't just about attraction or companionship. It was entering a world layered with complexity, danger, and subtle threats. The romance was intense, undeniable, but it came with an edge I hadn't experienced before. That night, lying awake, I reflected on the day. Evelyn's world was a mix of beauty and peril, intimacy and secrecy. I was drawn to it, to her, and despite the warnings, I couldn't pull away. The risk made it thrilling, addictive even. I understood one fundamental truth. Being with Evelyn was going to test me in ways I wasn't ready for, but I wanted to be tested. She was more than a woman. She was a storm, and I wanted to learn to navigate it. By the next morning, I was certain of one thing. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was committed to seeing this through. Evelyn had opened a door to a life I hadn't imagined, one filled with passion, danger, and the intoxicating possibility of something extraordinary. And as I met her later that day, her hazel eyes catching mine across the diner counter, I knew the story between us was only beginning, and that the next chapters would be darker, more thrilling, and far more complicated than anything I'd ever known. The following week brought a new layer of tension. Evelyn and I were closer than ever, but the small-town eyes and whispers were always present. I noticed it in subtle ways. People giving her long glances at the diner, hushed conversations when we walked by, and fleeting looks from strangers that seemed loaded with unspoken questions. She tried to brush it off, but I could see the flicker of caution in her hazel eyes. One afternoon, she invited me to her studio again, promising a surprise. When I arrived, she greeted me with that confident smile, but there was an edge to her mood I hadn't seen before. "Alex," she said quietly, "I need to show you something important." She led me to a corner of the studio where her personal sketches were piled. Most were abstract, but one stack was different, painful, intense, full of shadows and fragmented faces. I picked up a piece, feeling the raw emotion she had poured into it. These are incredible," I said, but she shook her head. "These are more than art," she explained. "They're pieces of my past. People I've dealt with, experiences that taught me who I am. Some of them are dangerous." The air thickened. I realized then that Evelyn's calm, controlled exterior hid scars I hadn't imagined. She was experienced, yes, but she had also survived threats, manipulations, and betrayals. And now, I was stepping into that world alongside her. Later that night, as we walked along the river, she opened up more. She told me about a business associate from New York who had tried to manipulate her financially and emotionally. Someone who had made her realize that power and trust rarely coexist peacefully. The way she spoke, there was no bitterness, only clarity, resilience, and caution. "I'm not sharing this to scare you," she said, taking my hand. "I'm sharing it so you understand that being close to me, it's not simple. There are layers, risks, but if you're willing to navigate them with me, we can be extraordinary together." I squeezed her hand, my heart pounding. I said. "I don't care about the risks. I want to be part of your life, all of it." And just like that, our relationship deepened. There was trust now, fragile but real, built on honesty and vulnerability. We weren't just attracted to each other. We were allies, partners in navigating a world that could be unexpectedly dangerous. But life wasn't going to let us bask in calm for long. A few days later, I noticed a car parked across the street from her apartment. A man sat inside, watching, as if waiting. My stomach twisted. I called Evelyn immediately. She didn't panic. "It's him," she said softly, almost to herself. "He thinks he can intimidate me. But he hasn't learned yet. He has no idea what he's dealing with." We spent the evening planning, discussing contingencies, and quietly tracking the car without drawing attention. I realized fully then that being with Evelyn meant living in a world where threats were always present, even in the most mundane settings. And yet, I felt exhilarated, alive, more connected to her than ever. By the end of the week, the stranger was gone. But the tension remained, a shadow over our budding intimacy. We had survived a threat together, and in doing so, our bond strengthened. I saw her resilience, her strategic mind, and the depths of her care. That night, as we sat on the balcony overlooking Cedar Falls, she rested her head on my shoulder. "You're stronger than I expected," she murmured. "But I hope you understand this life. My life, it's not easy. It's complicated, thrilling, and sometimes dangerous. And you're in it now." I kissed her forehead, feeling the weight of her words, but also the pull of something unforgettable. "I don't want easy," I said. "I want this. I want you. Complicated or not, danger or calm, I'm here." As we sat there, the town quiet beneath the stars, I knew one thing for certain. Being with Evelyn was more than romance. It was a journey through trust, danger, passion, and the thrilling uncertainty of life. And I was ready for every step, no matter how dark or intense it might get. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Evelyn and I settled into a rhythm, exploring the town and sharing small, intimate moments that felt almost stolen from the world. But there was always an undercurrent of tension, an invisible thread pulling at the edges of our lives. I noticed it in the way she scanned streets, the subtle flinch when certain names came up in conversation, and the careful way she handled her phone, deleting messages or refusing calls without explanation. One evening, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. She cooked, which surprised me. Evelyn wasn't the type to do domestic things often, but it was comforting in a strange way. We laughed over burnt garlic bread and overcooked pasta, the atmosphere light, yet the shadow of her past lingered in her eyes. After dinner, she put on some jazz, dimmed the lights, and for a moment, it felt like nothing else existed. I wanted to reach for her, to let the intimacy build, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her smile faded. A message: "Stop meddling, or there will be consequences." Her hazel eyes met mine, calm but serious. "It seems our peaceful moments are temporary," she said softly. "Some people don't like the fact that I'm happy, or that I let someone in." I realized then that being with Evelyn wasn't just about love or attraction. It was about navigating a life where danger and romance were intertwined, and I had to be prepared for both. The following days tested us. Strange calls, shadowy figures around the corners of streets, and cryptic notes left at her door became a regular occurrence. Each incident revealed another layer of her life, complex, calculated, and dangerous. Evelyn handled it with poise, but I could see the tension beneath her control. One night, we sat on her balcony, the small town lights flickering below us. "Alex," she said, voice low, "I've been honest with you, but there's more. If you want to stay, you need to understand that danger isn't something we can avoid. It's something we navigate together." I took her hand, my grip firm. "I don't just want to stay. I want to fight beside you, face it all with you. Whatever comes." That declaration seemed to shift something between us. There was a spark, yes, but also a shared understanding, a promise. Evelyn leaned into me, and I felt the weight of our bond solidifying. We were more than lovers. We were partners, allies in a life that demanded both courage and trust. But life didn't pause for romance. One afternoon, a man appeared at her studio, a familiar figure from her past, the same one who had been observing us weeks ago. He spoke in controlled tones, trying to intimidate, to unsettle, but Evelyn didn't flinch. I stayed close, feeling a mixture of fear and awe. She handled him with calm precision, dismissing him without raising her voice, her authority unmistakable. After he left, Evelyn turned to me. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Some chapters of my life aren't finished. And now, you're part of them." I realized then that being with Evelyn meant living in a world where romance and danger were inseparable. It was intoxicating, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. That night, lying in her apartment, I reflected on the days past. I felt a strange combination of fear and desire, a need to protect her, but also a craving to be part of her life fully, despite the risks. Evelyn had become more than a woman to me. She was a force of nature, a storm I wanted to weather. And I knew, without a doubt, that the coming weeks would test us further. The intimacy we shared, the passion, the trust, it was all fragile. But fragile could be beautiful, dangerous, and unforgettable. As I drifted to sleep, I made a silent promise. Whatever came, I would face it with her. No hesitation, no retreat. Evelyn had opened a door into a life I hadn't imagined, and I wasn't turning back. The tension in Cedar Falls was palpable, though most people didn't notice it. Evelyn and I were walking through the quiet streets one evening when a familiar black sedan appeared at the corner. The same man who had been a shadow over her past weeks ago. My heart raced. I could feel the electric charge in the air, the kind that precedes a storm. Evelyn didn't flinch. "He thinks he can scare me," she said softly, yet her voice carried steel. "But he hasn't learned yet what happens when he underestimates someone." We ducked into a small alley, our footsteps echoing softly. I could sense her calculating every move, every glance. She leaned close, whispering, "Alex, stay close. This is my world. I can guide you, but you need to trust me completely." I nodded, realizing that trust now wasn't abstract. It was survival, and I had never felt more alive. The man watched us from across the street, then slowly disappeared into the shadows. Evelyn exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders only slightly. "That was a warning," she said. "He's testing me, and by extension you." I swallowed hard. The reality of what I'd stepped into hit me fully. Loving Evelyn wasn't just about passion or desire. It meant navigating danger, uncertainty, and the ghosts of her past. But the adrenaline was intoxicating. I had never felt more connected to someone, nor more responsible for someone else's safety. That night, back at her apartment, Evelyn finally let her guard down slightly. She cooked a simple meal, and for a moment, the outside world melted away. We laughed over small things, the burnt edges of garlic bread, the clumsiness of our shared attempts at cutting vegetables, and for a few precious hours, it felt normal. After dinner, we moved to the balcony, the town lights twinkling beneath us. She leaned against me, her voice low and intimate. "Alex, being with me isn't just about passion or romance. It's about navigating life's shadows. It's messy, dangerous, and sometimes terrifying, but it's also worth it if you're willing." I held her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, the strength in her words. "I am willing," I said. "No matter what comes, I want to be with you. Complications, danger, darkness, it doesn't matter. I choose this. I choose you." She turned to me, her hazel eyes searching mine. "You're brave," she said softly. "But bravery isn't enough. You'll need patience, clarity, and understanding. You'll need to see the world the way I do, to understand not everything is as it seems." And she was right. Over the next days, I began to see glimpses of her past. The careful way she handled emails, the subtle interactions with strangers, and the notes she scribbled in her notebook. There were hints of a life filled with battles I hadn't known existed. She was a storm contained in human form, and I was drawn to it irresistibly. One evening, as we sat on her balcony sipping wine, she shared a story from years ago, a betrayal that had cost her a lot, emotionally and professionally. Her voice was calm, but the depth of pain and resilience in her words was palpable. I realized then that Evelyn's life wasn't just layered. It was forged in fire, and surviving it required more than intelligence. It required courage, loyalty, and emotional endurance. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't just want to be with you for the easy parts," I said. "I want to face it all. I want to be part of your story, the good and the bad." She smiled faintly, leaning against me. "Then you're ready," she said. "But remember, the world outside isn't gentle. Love isn't gentle either, and we've only just begun." I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The romance was intense, undeniably, but the stakes were higher now. Evelyn's world wasn't simple, and being part of it meant embracing the shadows as much as the light. And for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged, despite the danger, despite the unknown. As the night deepened, I realized one thing. This story between us wasn't just about falling in love. It was about survival, trust, passion, and the thrill of stepping into a life far more complex than I could have ever imagined. And I was ready to see it through, whatever it took. The tension between us had been building for weeks. The shadows of Evelyn's past weren't fading. They were pressing into our present. A few nights ago, a stranger had left a note on her door. Stay away or regret it. And while she had faced it with calm precision, I could see the subtle weight it put on her shoulders. That evening, after a long day of errands and quiet walks, we found ourselves sitting in her living room, the silence between us heavy. I could feel her tension radiating, but I didn't want to push her. For once, I let the quiet speak. "Alex," she finally said, voice low, "sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, letting someone into my world. It's messy, dangerous, and I don't want to hurt you or anyone else." I reached for her hand. "Evelyn, look at me," I said gently. "I knew there would be risks. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but it's worth it. You're worth it." Her eyes softened, glimmering with the vulnerability she rarely showed. For a long moment, we just held each other's hands, listening to the quiet hum of the town outside. I could feel her walls beginning to crumble, not completely, but enough to let me in. We spent the rest of the evening talking, truly talking, about fears, about past mistakes, about moments we had never shared with anyone else. I told her about my own insecurities, how I worried I wasn't ready for the intensity of her life. She listened, never judging, just letting me speak. By the time we moved to the balcony with glasses of wine, there was a shift in the air. The night felt softer, less charged with tension. "You've been patient with me," she said, leaning against me. "I don't know if anyone else would have stayed." "I didn't stay because it was easy," I replied. "I stayed because I want to be here, with you. All of it." She smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile that made my chest ache. It was the first time in weeks I saw her let go of the constant vigilance that defined her life. The shadows of the past were still there, but for the first time, they didn't feel insurmountable. We leaned into each other, and for a long while, the only sound was the quiet of the town and our breathing. No threats, no looming danger, just us. I realized that part of loving Evelyn meant accepting her past and the risks she carried, but it also meant creating moments like this, moments of peace and connection. By the end of the night, there was a sense of reconciliation between us, not just emotionally, but spiritually. The tension hadn't vanished completely, but it had shifted. Instead of a wall between us, there was now a bridge, fragile, yet real. As I walked home later, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Evelyn had let me in, and I had met her halfway. We weren't free of the challenges that lay ahead, but we were united in a way that made the risks feel manageable. For the first time, I believed that love, messy, dangerous, and unpredictable, could also be a source of strength. And that belief carried me forward, ready for whatever the coming days would bring. After that night, something shifted between Evelyn and me. The tension that had haunted our days began to ease, replaced by a quiet, comfortable closeness. We were still cautious. Cedar Falls had eyes everywhere, and shadows from her past still lingered, but the fear that had clung to every interaction felt less suffocating. We spent more time together in ways that felt ordinary yet extraordinary. Morning coffees at the diner turned into long walks through the town's hidden corners. She showed me her favorite mural tucked behind an old bookstore, a place that felt almost secret. The way she smiled as she shared stories from her life, the small victories, the regrets, the fleeting joys, made me fall for her all over again. One evening, we went to the river. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and rose. We sat on the grassy bank, shoulders touching, letting the quiet surround us. Evelyn leaned her head on my shoulder. "I think I'm finally starting to breathe again," she murmured. "Being with you, it makes the rest of it, the chaos, the past, feel less heavy." I wrapped my arm around her, feeling the warmth and security in that simple gesture. "I feel the same," I said. "Whatever comes, I want us to face it together. Not just the danger, but life itself. I want to be part of your world, fully, without holding back." She smiled, a soft, real smile that reached her eyes. For the first time in months, I saw her relax completely, let go of the tension that had defined her life. "I think we can do that," she whispered. "I trust you." Those words hit me harder than anything else. Trust had always been fragile between us, tested by shadows and threats. Hearing her voice that night, knowing she meant it, felt like a victory more profound than any triumph over the past dangers we had faced. The following days were filled with small, meaningful moments. We cooked together, laughed over burnt meals, and even danced in her living room to music too loud for the quiet apartment. For once, it was just us, and I savored it. It was a rare kind of intimacy, not just physical but emotional, where vulnerability met acceptance. One night, we sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, watching the town lights twinkle. She rested her head against my shoulder. "I've spent so long defending myself," she said softly. "But with you, I don't feel the need to hide. I feel safe." I kissed the top of her head, feeling a rush of emotion. "You are safe," I whispered. "With me, with us. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." For the first time, the past threats seemed less daunting. The stranger at the gallery, the warning notes, the lingering dangers, they hadn't disappeared, but they no longer controlled us. We had found a way to create our own peace, to reclaim joy amidst the shadows. As we sat there, the night calm around us, I realized that love could be both fierce and tender, complicated yet simple in its own way. Evelyn had taught me that life doesn't have to be easy to be beautiful, and I was beginning to understand that trust, patience, and shared vulnerability were more powerful than fear or danger. By the end of the night, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. Our relationship had evolved, strengthened not by the absence of conflict, but by how we had chosen to face it together. Evelyn had let me in, fully, and I had embraced her world, completely. It wasn't perfect, life never is, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I believed in the possibility of happiness that could survive shadows, danger, and past scars. I held her close, feeling her heartbeat sync with mine. The storm had passed, or at least, we had learned to dance in the rain. And I knew that together, we could face whatever else was coming. The days that followed felt lighter, though Cedar Falls remained the same quiet town with its watchful eyes. Evelyn and I had found a rhythm, a delicate balance of trust, love, and the cautious respect for the shadows that had once loomed over her life. But for the first time, the shadows no longer controlled us. We spent long mornings walking through the parks and streets, sharing laughter over trivial things, and exploring hidden corners of the town that felt almost ours alone. The tension that had haunted us seemed distant, a fading echo rather than a constant drumbeat. I could see it in Evelyn's eyes, the peace she had reclaimed, the vulnerability she allowed herself to show. One afternoon, she took me to a hill overlooking the town. The wind carried the scent of autumn leaves, and the sky was a wash of pinks and golds. "Alex," she said, her voice soft yet certain, "we've been through a lot. And yet, here we are, still standing, together." I took her hands in mine, feeling the warmth and strength in her grip. "I wouldn't want to face any of it with anyone else," I said. "You've taught me more about trust, love, and resilience than I ever imagined." She smiled, her eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. "And you've reminded me that it's okay to let someone in, to share not just the good, but all the messy, complicated parts of life." We stayed there for a long time, just holding each other, the town stretching out beneath us. In that moment, it felt like the past, the dangers, the threats, the lingering echoes of betrayal, had no power. We had faced it together, and that unity made every challenge, every fear, manageable. That evening, back at her apartment, we cooked dinner together, laughing as we struggled with the simplest recipes. The intimacy was effortless now. Touches, glances, shared smiles, but also profound. We had moved beyond just passion. We had built understanding, mutual respect, and an unspoken promise to protect one another. Later, we settled on the balcony with glasses of wine, the town lights twinkling below. "You know," Evelyn said, leaning against me, "I didn't think I'd find someone willing to stay. Someone who could match me, challenge me, and still hold me gently at the same time." "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. Not for the past, not for anything. We face it all together, and we'll come out stronger." She rested her head against my shoulder, and for the first time, I saw her completely let go. The tension, the wariness, the constant vigilance, all softened. There was trust now, profound and unwavering. The stranger from the gallery, the warning notes, the subtle threats. None of it mattered anymore. Our bond had become the stronger force, one built on shared experiences, patience, and the courage to confront not just danger, but our own fears and vulnerabilities. That night, as we watched the stars, Evelyn whispered, "I never imagined I'd feel this kind of peace, this kind of love. You've changed that for me. And you've changed me too," I said. "I've learned that love isn't about avoiding fear or danger. It's about choosing to face it with the person who matters most." For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at home, with Evelyn, with her world, and with the life we were building together. The storm had passed, and though challenges would always arise, we had discovered a deeper truth. Love, when forged through trials, danger, and trust, was unbreakable. As we sat there in silence, the quiet of Cedar Falls embracing us, I realized that our story, messy, complicated, intense, had reached a new chapter. One of harmony, understanding, and unwavering commitment. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. Stronger, closer, and ready to embrace the life we had chosen. Love, shadows, and all.